Hi everyone, Jesse, Schoolcraft Family Farmstead again. And yep, working on the Equinox again. Nothing major, just another oil change. One of the last videos I did was how to change the oil on this car. This one's a 2017 and it's due for another one. So I figured might as well, considering it's April 5th today, and tax day is April 15th, so only 10 days away. So some of you might be buying a car if you get a tax refund. So I figured I'd talk a bit about this 2017 Equinox and talk about some of the pros and cons and whether I think you should buy one if you're getting a car. Especially if you have a family, it could be a good vehicle, but there are some things that I think you should consider before you buy one. I know I've got it jacked up right now. I've got the, don't worry, I've got jack stands underneath there too. You just can't see them. I'm sure somebody would comment and tell me that I'm not being safe, but even if I didn't, I'm sure it's fine. Anyway, this body style was made as the Equinox from 2010 to 2017. So this is the last year for this body style. And I know you see, it seems like everywhere I look, you see like this exact same car driving around. I see so many white Equinoxes of this body style driving around. Actually, sometimes when Caitlin's not with me, I'll see one and think that it's her, and then it isn't. So I'm going to talk about some things that I like and things that I don't like about it. A lot of it centers with this, the engine. I have a love-hate relationship with this engine. A little love and a lot of hate. So the one good thing about it, yeah, probably the only good thing about it that I can think of, the gas mileage is great. It's awfully dirty right now, but the gas mileage is great. We drove over to my parents' house last weekend, last Saturday, and at one point the 50 mile fuel average was 40.5 miles per gallon. And I really wasn't babying it too terribly much. I was just doing a lot of easing in and out of the throttle and letting it roll as much as I could. But I was still cruising at anywhere between 60 and 65 on state highways and going through several towns as we make our way eastward over to Ohio. So the gas mileage for I don't know, do they consider this a crossover? Is it a crossover? I can't remember. It might be. Crossover SUV, that's what I'm gonna call it. For a little SUV is really it does pretty well with its gas mileage. However, there are a lot of other things that I don't like about it. I should also add to this too, I hate to be so negative to a Chevy. I grew up a GM guy. Like my whole family, my entire time growing up, we had all GM vehicles. My grandpa, my mom's dad, worked for GM for, I believe it was 43 years. And so her whole time growing up, they had all GM vehicles. My dad, I think pretty much all of my dad's upbringing, like when he was growing up as a kid, they had GM vehicles. My great uncle, my grandpa's youngest brother, he worked for Allison Transmission for 30 years. He's had almost all GM vehicles. He's had a few Jeep Wranglers several years back. But like his trucks have always been Chevy or GMC trucks. GM family, both sides, just coincidentally, mom and dad's side. And so I've always just kind of followed that too. Been a GM guy. I know I have a Volkswagen Passat that I bought back in 2017, and my dad has two, but those have been like the only GM vehicles that I've ever really, like I said, I don't own dads, but have really been around a whole lot in my family. And so obviously this is Chevy, so this is a GM vehicle. And so I hate to be, I'm kind of a GM loyalist, I guess you could say. So I hate to be negative, but these things are issues that have bothered me ever since since I've really been around this car and worked on it some. We'll start here with me being nitpicky. The black cap right there, if you recall from my video I did on the oil change, it's where the oil filter is. I've got it loosened right now to let some of the oil drain off the filter before I remove it. It's a pain. I like that it's on top of the engine. That's nice. But then you've got all these wires, the dipstick, all that stuff is in the way. So then you end up getting oil residue all over all sorts of stuff. That's not much fun. I don't enjoy that. So that's kind of a pain. On top of that, this engine's a turd. Sorry, it is. It's the 2 liter, or wait, is it a 2.4 liter? I think it's a 2.4 liter. Yes, 2.4 liter Ecotech 4-cylinder engine. And it has no guts at all when you need it, which for us is rare. I mean, we try to drive as smoothly and easily as possible to get that good gas mileage. But in the rare instance when we do need it, it's not there. It does not have good acceleration whatsoever, mainly because it's normally aspirated. Doesn't have a turbo. It needs a turbo. But then they would fix that in 2018 when they started adding turbos to their 4-cylinder engines in these Equinoxes. But they completely redesigned the body too. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But it doesn't have any guts. Slow, doesn't accelerate well at all. So that's a pain. The big thing though, actually there have been 2 things that have happened to this engine since Caitlin has had it, and both of them happened since she met me. The 2 big things though that have happened with this engine since Caitlin has had it, and both of them have happened since I knew her, or since I met her. First of all, right after our wedding, the check engine light started flashing and it was running really rough. It would die sometimes when you'd be sitting at idle. And even when you'd go to accelerate, it was just really like herky-jerky and was just running horribly. Thankfully, she got an extended warranty when she bought this. She bought it in 2018, so it was a year old and it had around 9,000 miles on it, if I remember correctly. And so the extended warranty was still in effect because I think this had 94,000 miles on it when this happened. So usually it's the other way around where you have because the warranty went to 100,000 miles and usually it would have been happens at 101,000 miles. But no, thankfully we were on the right side of the warranty. And it turned out the timing chains had stretched. And I know the owner's manual recommends to change the timing chains every 100,000 miles, I believe, if I remember correctly. So it didn't even make it to 100,000 and the timing chains had stretched out. So thankfully the warranty covered that, and I just had to pay for the spark plugs, and there were a couple other little miscellaneous parts that weren't covered under the warranty that I had to cover, or I had to pay for. But I was going to change the spark plugs at 100,000 miles anyway. But thankfully, the warranty covered the timing chains because that was going to be around $2,100 at the Chevy dealership here in town, and only ended up having to pay the deductible and the spark plugs, and like I said, there's a couple other miscellaneous parts, and it was slightly under $200. So that was a big help to have that warranty for that particular instance. The other thing that happened was quite a bit more serious. Let's see, this was Christmas Eve of 2022. There was a snowstorm that had blown in a few days before Christmas, and it snapped crazy cold here. Like the low temperature Christmas Eve morning was, I remember it was 10 below zero. And the Equinox was out here at the farm, and I came out here with my truck, if I remember correctly, and the Equinox had been sitting for a couple days, and I drove it back to town because we were going to either go to, I think we were going to my parents the next day on Christmas Day, and we'd already been to her parents, if I remember correctly. But either way, it had been sitting, and it was, like I said, crazy cold. It was probably around 15 below at that point, and that's just the temperature without the wind chill. So I started it up. It started fine. I was driving in town, and I got to the interstate, so it's probably about, I don't know, 3 miles away, and I heard this kind of a soft pop. I don't really know how else to explain it, but I could hear something like just a one pop sound. I thought, well, that sounded weird. It ran fine, and a few minutes later, I got there, and I get out of the car, and I see this trail of oil had been following me, and my heart sunk at that point because I was afraid that probably ran out of oil, and now the engine's toast. So I let it cool off and confirmed. I put my finger on the ground and picked up some residue and figured out it was definitely engine oil, because then I looked under the car and saw the whole bottom side of the engine was rather soaked in oil as well. So I immediately started doing some research and found a rather common issue with these pretty quickly in my Google searching. So apparently my descriptions of things could be slightly off, but from my understanding, in the intake there is a chamber for the PCV, the positive crankcase ventilation, and that accumulates condensation, but it doesn't drain that condensation off properly. So if it builds up that condensation, then you get a cold snap, that condensation will freeze into an ice block in there and not allow the crankcase to vent properly. So when that happened, it built up quite a bit of pressure and blew out the rear main seal. And apparently that's a notorious issue on my favorite engine in this thing. So it blew out the rear main seal, and that was engine oil that had been following me. Thankfully, I didn't have to drive very far. It was just a few minutes that I had driven since I heard that soft pop. And after the engine cooled off, I checked the oil, and there was still oil on the dipstick. It was still in the range on the dipstick. So I knew I was in good shape then, and well, I should say I was in good shape. I knew that the engine would be okay, but it was going to need a pretty substantial repair, obviously, because the only way to change that seal is you got to get to the backside of the engine. And I had planned on doing it. I was planning on doing it, and I got to thinking that I don't really have a good place to work, like do substantial work like this on vehicles. I mean, probably the most substantial things I've done on this, I changed both of the front hubs out here on the, I'm kind of blocking the view, on the front end. I know, probably don't need to show you that, but anyway, I changed both of the front hubs because they were growling real bad. The wheel bearings were going bad, and I changed both the front hubs out here. But the only good way to do that would be to change the rear main seal would be to drop the engine or lift the engine out. I don't have a lift, and I don't have a garage to do really pretty significant work like that. And I got a quote at the dealership here in town, and I think they were wanting close to $2,000 to do it. So then I got a hold of Mike Swango. He owns Mike's Automotive, kind of halfway between Martinsville and Paragon. Highly recommend him. He gave me a quote for $1,400, and he would also install. Apparently, they have now. This has it too. An upgraded intake that took care of the issue where it would build up condensation and end up freezing, blow out the rear main seal. So now this has an upgraded intake. At the time when he replaced the rear main seal, it did not, the upgraded intake was out of stock. So he told me I can go ahead and replace the rear main seal, get that taken care of, and whenever the intakes are in stock, then we can, then I can let you know, and then I'll get that installed as well. So that's what we did. It was around this time last year, I believe. So the Equinox sat for around 3 or 4 months last spring, because he gave me a quote for $1,400, which was quite a bit cheaper than the dealership. And he said he had done several of these in the past. So again, well-known issue on this engine. And we finally got it down there and got the rear main seal replaced. And then we had to wait until I checked, I think it was around October, to see if the intakes were in stock, and they were. So I took it down there again in October, and he replaced the intake, and all he did was charge me for the part for that, which was really nice. Didn't charge me labor to replace the intake, which I thought was cool. If you're in the Martinsville area or anywhere around here and you need work, I would recommend Mike's Automotive in or between Martinsville and Paragon, right off of 67. He was really fair with us, real quick too. Got us in and out within I think it was just a couple days that it took for him to do all that stuff on the rear main seal for this engine. So those were the 2 main issues though that we've had with this, and that's why I have a lot of hate and a little love for this engine, because good gas mileage, but I've had several issues, and just as a whole, it's a turd. Doesn't accelerate. It's kind of dirty, need to get it cleaned out. But one of the reasons Caitlin wanted this when she bought it in 2018 is because of its room, which it does. The seat goes back pretty far, and you end up with quite a bit of leg room there in the front. I mean, in change though, you don't end up with much in the back. But here, I'll open. Yeah, there's all Riddick stuff. Don't mind that mess, but this car seat's kind of in the way. Let me go around to the other side. Yeah, and there's all Riddick stuff, so don't mind that. But it does have a pretty decent amount of room, and especially here in the very back as well. We've got a pretty large stroller. Oh look, there's the oil and windshield wipers. Got a pretty large stroller, and it fits in there perfectly, and still has quite a bit of room to put stuff on top. Plus these seats fold down if you don't have a big old car seat there in the way, to be able to put more items back here. But try to get a better reference point here. So yeah, quite a bit of cargo space too, and apparently trying to get another passenger here, which I don't want. You stay here. So it is pretty roomy on the interior. I guess that's another plus too. And a power lift gate, which have become pretty common anymore. So I think that'll be it for this video. To make a long story short, if you're looking for a car, if you have a small family, I don't know that I would buy one of these, to be honest with you. This body style was made from 2010 to 2017, and this engine actually in 2017, if I remember correctly from what I read, was actually a little, I don't know how, but it was a little better than the ones from 2010 to 2016. Apparently 2010 to 2016, definitely don't get one of those, because they had some oil consumption issues after a little while, where they would just start like gulping the oil. And thankfully, yet, knock on wood, haven't had that issue. And we shouldn't, because apparently with 2017 they had resolved some of those issues, but obviously they still have some issues of their own. But then in 2018 they went to a redesigned body, and with that redesigned body they also had redesigned engines as well. And I think there was a 1.6 liter 4-cylinder turbo engine, and then they had I think it was a 2 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. Some of these from 2010 to 2017 had the V6 engine. Now, if you're willing to sacrifice a little bit with gas mileage, you might consider getting one of these with a V6. I think the interior is fairly roomy for a small family. You can get other vehicles like bigger SUVs with more room, but You might be able to get one of these at a decent price as a V6, but just know, again, you're sacrificing some gas mileage, and that may be worth it. I don't know. The gas mileage is awfully good on this, but at the end of the day, if we were looking for a vehicle, a used vehicle, and came across one of these, I think I'd probably steer clear and look for something else with, I like the 4-cylinder engine, but it'd have to have a turbo in a vehicle this size. So anyway, if you would please like and subscribe, I'd appreciate it. And I know I say this all the time, but hopefully I can get some more videos made soon. I've got a couple of ideas. And shout out to Drew Willis and the Chronicles of Drew Bear. We're supposed to be doing a 500 subscriber special. I'm now up above 500 subscribers, and he's got a special segment planned to celebrate 500 subscribers, and next goal is 1,000. So hopefully we can get there soon with your help and your subscriptions. I'd greatly appreciate it. So we'll see you next time, though. Take care.